Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all my friends on the Earthship. Welcome to my little Sunday sanctuary. It's a time I reserve for the discussion of being the alchemist of your own life. So welcome. I'm Cindy Carter. I'm an intuitive, an artist, and an energy healer. I also do spirit consulting. This series of alchemy podcasts every Sunday is a place every week to gather your quiet space, to make a sacred 30 minutes to delve into the progressive building of this information that I'm bringing. It is about sovereignty, and it is about you becoming the Master Alchemist, which is like the Master Orchestrator, the Master of your domain. You're in control of your life as a sovereign being on this earth. And this is just a little weekly reminder of that for you. So last podcast, we talked about the choice being now. And what was the choice? The ultimate choice I talked about was right here and right now. It's the choice of your soul, and it's the choice of many lifetimes. It's the choice of life or death. And we are being gifted with some abilities now that allow us to choose life over death. And these things are that we've been gifted with creation and remembrance and universal flow. And that's what we talked about last week, about these things being able to allow us to thrive in our creations when we choose life over death as a process of understanding, and if we use that as our core intention consciously. So choosing to live beyond a construct, whether that's a thought or an idea or some implied agreement. Oh my gosh, I could do a whole podcast on implied agreements. Maybe next week. But for now, the choice before us is the choice to live in each moment, to proliferate life, beneficial divine life. It's really crucial to our understanding of today's podcast, which is perspective aplenty. It's like once we see our choices, our truth, and how we want to live and how we choose in each moment a life of wonder and peace, we really need to widen our view to have a perspective aplenty. I love the word aplenty. I use it aplenty. It's such a great description of abundance. It's casual, it's unfiltered, it's just plenty of it. Like almost to gluttony, but not quite. Generous amounts of something. Right there. Like right here, right now. The choices before us are now aplenty. We can choose a lot of paths. We can choose a lot of roads. So what do we want to do is to alter or broaden or to come to a bigger idea of our future. So we work on our perspective and our understanding of our perspective. And if we consciously work with that, wow. Because it really can be a vague idea to those who see things really literally, because perspective aplenty would be unbiased, allowing, perspective as a gift of opportunity to broaden your life and your ability not to judge. Not like I'm going to prove a conspiracy theory is the truth, but to allow the idea that all beings have their own filter to process through, to allow others the right to have an alternate view. Yes, this is broadening your perspective, not narrowing it. So right now, our choices can run the gamut. All types of atrocious ideas are about to be exposed on many levels on this earth. Locally, historically, in your own communities, in your countries, in this part of the galaxy. There's a truth about to be displayed. It's a universal understanding that many races have waited for. And if you have a remembrance of any of your past lives, you might have tapped into this. This is the ultimate eternal idea of broadening perspective. Universal view, universal life, life aplenty. I suddenly saw some planets on a plate, like really piled high, like with a butler's hand, holding up this silver plate. Well, now that reminds me of when the word aplenty came to me. I'm going to go off on this little side tangent. Just go with me here. There's something I'm going to bring up about it. Aplenty, the word, came to me in a broadened idea, in a real simple example that made a huge difference in my understanding of perspective and my perspective of what affects my ability to judge or not judge something, and no need to manipulate what is. Those were, tricky things for my lifespan. To explore life and to move with it and trust what's happening, trusting my heart in my awareness of what's happening. So this story I'm going to tell you was like 30 years ago. So I got invited to this restaurant years ago, and I had heard about it a long time in a town a couple hours away in South Carolina. It's a good old country southern food place, and I had no idea what to expect. But, the word aplenty, that's why I'm going here. People, just work with me. I walk up to the restaurant and we get in line. We're outside because it's a really long line around the corner. This place is a really popular place. And we get closer each time, we would walk up to the door and the door would open. We could hear all this yelling, all this loud yelling coming from inside. Every time the door would open, ah, and then slam. And as you would get closer, you could start hearing words. And the words were like, 4 aplenty, burger cheese aplenty, biscuits collards aplenty. And I stood there for like 15 minutes waiting to get in this door, hearing all these words aplenty. Well, it kind of made you really hungry. But once inside, there was a huge open kitchen right in front of you. And you walked up to a counter where you could see like row after row of these deep fryers with about 15, 30 men all slinging white flour everywhere with deep fryers going. The man at the counter was calling out orders for the kitchen to prepare. So there was no display screens, no tablets, no paper printers. This is 30 years ago. We had those things then. He wasn't the cashier, this man that was standing there. He was only the, aplenty caller. So he would scream, burger aplenty. And I was just taken aback. I really didn't know what to expect. And then all of a sudden I saw this stuff coming out, and it was like whatever you ordered had French fries and onion rings piled all the way on top, just as high as you could pile these things without them falling off the plate. And these people must have had this, act of doing this for so long that they were really good at it. So people were having trouble balancing their plate on their way back to their table. So I was like, really? Wow. What is this? Because I had a business mind going on back then. I was calculating food costs, and then I was looking, at how they were doing this and all the employee food costs, and then I was looking at how they could go overage. I just kind of froze while this was all going on, and all of a sudden, I was right there, ready to place my order. I had no clue what was happening. It was like I had the deer in the headlights. Look, I know that guy thought that. And so this guy looked at me, and he just knew I wasn't going to even come up with an answer now. So he took his hand and pushed it towards me and then brushed me to the side, like swoosh. And I just moved with his hand. I just stood there and oh, wow, I just been dissed. I've just been pushed to the side. I felt like I was in timeout or something. So I was standing there thinking, man, this is just food. Order something, Cindy. And I immediately stood back in line and ordered aplenty. Why not? It looked really good to me then. And he looked at me and he said, good job, lady. Well, now I say I loved every minute of this plate aplenty and endless sweet tea. And this man's encouragement to get me, out of my head and into the program. And I needed to broaden my horizons and then just choose and move on. casual abundance displayed right in front of me. Of course, I don't eat like that now, the occasional French fry or sweet potato French fry. This is about perspective. It's not really about healthy food choices. So all you people back there with your mindful eating, calm down. I heard the word aplenty, and I heard it so many times that it made a real reference to me. And so that's what we're talking about. It was an experience to me of abundance, of excess, taken to extremes. You see, I've kind of always brought the extreme to myself. And some of you, I know, have too. You see the polarities of life come at us, one polar opposite and the other polar opposite, for us to see the edges of them. And sometimes we need to see these because we haven't been remembering them from our past. And we need to see that we can become very out of balance by taking on the polarities. It's like sometimes the movie has to become about the edges of the polarity. When you're a bit stubborn and maybe not seeing your choices, that was me. So I had to see beyond food costs, and I had to see beyond what made sense and what was more like, civilized, really. But it was fun, and it was enjoyable, and it wasn't a healthy choice. But it was about healthy awareness, and my healthy awareness of my lack of perspective. How tight was my perspective on proper food and proper appearance and proper presentation? I mean, I had to give it up in the amount of time it took to decide if I wanted aplenty. Heck yes, I want aplenty. I'll take perspective aplenty. The ability to view life with abundance. To change my perspective is to hone what is my inner truth. To allow a larger truth. A probable reality beyond what I can see or touch or smell. It's bigger than that. It's a big gray area of the unknown. It's like the mystery. Or how to embrace the mystery aplenty. Once you come into this understanding that there's a different way of viewing, a different way of having a perspective, then we come right into trust. You have to come into a trust of a universal flow to allow yourself to move through life peacefully and with some confidence and compassion. So this perspective, like with an artist, it's to change your line of view. To come at something with a different frame of reference. You know how they'll draw where the light is coming from and alter the perspective based on the light. Well, this is what's happening inside our bodies, inside our minds, coming up with a new frame of reference to allow a wider perspective. This proliferates life. So, a graphic artist that works in 2 dimensions, like flat images, could change their point of view to see this, whatever image it is, in a 3-dimensional state with a side and a top and a bottom and all the different angles that come into play when you view it from a larger perspective than just ink on paper. It created an environment. It created a feeling. It might have created sacred geometry. It might have enacted some type of cellular memory in you. Geometry has very much powerful instincts that you and I may not even begin to understand. But I have a wider perspective to understand it, to be allowing of that to work with me. Like to see an image of a circle, then to decide, it is a sphere. It's not flat. There's a 360 view. You could see it from all the aspects of yourself. Yeah, I hit a nerve there. You see, whatever it is, say you're looking at art, one says it's sad feeling and the other one says it's a happy feeling. So your perspective might be different. Those are polar views, polar opposites. But what I'm talking about, a broader perspective, is compassionate, broader perspective, is to put on someone else's lenses and see what they see, and understand how they understand it. And these would be like magic lenses, wouldn't they? Where you wouldn't touch a nerve on anybody. You wouldn't say things that would trigger people unless you were talking from the heart space, kindly. So you can start to expand your mind and expand your heart to view life with compassion when you expand your view, your perspective. It's really how you choose consciously to, put on a lens or take off a lens or put on blinders. Blinders are put on sometimes on purpose, for secondary gain. We all have a little bit of self-sabotage in us. But if you really look at the truth of life, of being if you wanted to be a grounded and strength-filled being, then you would accept some type of lens that would understand the views of others. In a kind and gentle way, you would access the beings that you've been, retrieve the consciousness of that without the stories, and express your life through it. You see, right there, we're in soul retrieval. Bringing in the higher aspects or lower, if you choose. People are choosing right now, you're seeing it. To bring about change, to bring about a new understanding, instead of a really narrow view that maybe Becky or Susie or Joey has. The prescribed view of an oppressive society or of a religion or of a very narrow conservative way of looking at life. So there are things that you can consciously do to increase and broaden your perspective and how it affects your everyday life. You could activate your sovereign rights or your understanding of what sovereignty is. As a soul upon this earth, you could be self-directed, self-governed. That doesn't mean you can't have assistance or that we don't unify and help each other. It means you make all the decisions as the owner of this body, in benevolence to yourself. Being sovereign and without influence of religions or doctrines or decrees, no gurus, no idols, no blindly following another or whatever was intended for you without your knowledge or your agreement. Sovereignty is taking back your soul essence and claiming it as your own. That's a big subject right there. Sovereign expression of your everyday motions and your thoughts and your ideas. This will really change your repetitive patterns of, denial of life. If you become inspirational to yourself, there'll be a widening of your perspective. You'll start becoming the alchemist of your life. You're becoming the alchemist anyway. You could just become a more benevolent alchemist, more compassionate alchemist to yourself by embracing, say, the mystery of life and trusting yourself. It could also be a catalyst for changing your perspective. Being aware of your spiritual nature, of your universal divine lens, of your open heart. It's here. And everyone can access it if they work through their existing perceptions of life, the beliefs and ideas they were taught, which most of what we were taught in schools and universities is filled with deception and manipulation of the truth of reality. That was kind of designed for the last 100 years by some corporations, like the Rand corporations and some other ones. I don't go by corporate doctrine. I go by my heart. In universal flow, to become aware on a broader scale of my multidimensional view of life is like taking on a higher or finer benevolent presence of myself. By allowing myself to be more kind to myself and kind to others, to express my feelings more and to allow myself to not judge others for their feelings. This is what I'm teaching, and it's to be learned by all of us through this soul retrieval. But remember, you're the consciousness and remembrance of the energy of these past lives. You don't have to bring the threads of the stories with you, unless the stories have a teaching, a benevolent teaching to you. If not, it's a waste of your brain space, and it's energy depletion. It's partly vampirism. I'm not a fan of past life stories. Too much of that, and we're back at square one trying to get the memory of traumatic events out of your energy field and out of your cellular body. That's why we brought up the past lives to begin with. So let's integrate the past lives so we have one voice for all the lives. Because too much replay of anything past 24 hours ago is not choosing the now moment and the proliferation of life. You see, I'm really teaching about forward movement, not, what happened in a life of trauma and pain. I thought we came together to transmute that and release that so that you can widen your perspective of life and maybe see your divinity and see your beauty, see your creativity. Creativity aplenty. See, there's abundance where others see lack. There's life where others see death. There's beauty and clarity in your thoughts and in your mind and in your heart if you try to access them. This is the wider view. To have the view of other people's truths and the truth of your own as a sovereign being, looking at life like it's one big opportunity, is the lens of universal flow. It's high service to yourself to have this view of yourself as creation itself, as wonder, as grace. So choosing perspective aplenty is choosing abundant, proliferant life. The proliferation and the activation of one's life force is really the basis of all my work. Whether it's in remote healing sessions or my holographic healing workshops or in my consulting sessions, this is the focus. The proliferation of life. Sovereignty and your own life force and the consciousness to open your heart to all of life. That's the foundation of what I have to offer. I have a grace meditation series, a free ebook of channelings about compassion and integration or immortality, and this YouTube channel right here that you could subscribe to as part of my offerings. And I'm doing some cool things pretty soon with some subtle energy technologies on Patreon really soon. I'm collaborating with a friend. We're going to offer some really cool technologies. So it's with an abundant heart and my wishes of widened perspective as you make your way through these coming days where we'll all need to be centered and offering of our love aplenty. Many blessings.